happy little games. When it comes to classic arcade racers, it doesn't get much better than Sega's sprite-scaling Mamma Jamma Outrun. The game featured a working gear shift, foot pedals, and the option to select 3 different tunes including Passing Breeze and Magical Golden Shower. The iconic music bounces around from eardrum to eardrum as you white-knuckle your way down the scenic road. It made an impression on gamers everywhere from a certain 12-year-old Patman QC who saw it for the first time at Pizza Hut to one of the giants of the arcade industry, Eugene Jarvis. Mr. Jarvis would take his love for racing down those wide open spaces and create something truly memorable, which is what we are talking about today, Cruisin USA. This point-to-point racer infuses various elements of Outrun with a healthy dose of cutting-edge arcade technology. What was the original concept behind Cruisin USA? Why was the game censored when it was released on the home consoles? So put the pedal to the metal and don't hit any cows because this is the history of Cruisin USA. If you ever wanted to know what a bona fide superstar in the realm of video game creators looks like, all you have to do is check out the track record of a certain Eugene Jarvis. He got his start as a designer of pinball machines, first for Atari and then later for Williams in the 1970s. Thanks to the rise of microprocessor-based arcade games which caught fire thanks to the likes of Space Invaders, he would go on to create another classic by the name of Defender. Not one to rest on his laurels, he created the dual joystick shooter Robotron and its successor Smash TV. As the 80s came to a close, he would also create the ultra-violent run-and-gun game Narc. Fast forward to the early 90s, Mr. Jarvis had an idea for a racing game. He was quite enthralled with Outrun and he wanted to capture some of its magic and put it into a racing game of his own. He loved the idea of jumping in the car and going for a drive, which is what Outrun provided, but he wanted to have a really good 3D simulation as well. According to Mr. Jarvis, the cool thing was the spirit of just having fun and going out for a drive. It wasn't like a hardcore race. So my idea was to have a really good 3D simulation that was responsive to the driver, and by using 3D texture mapping, we could have realistic digitized backgrounds. Another game that inspired him was Atari's Hard Drivin' with its fully polygonal world, but he was not a fan of the controls. He was also not a fan of the tracks which he felt were far too unforgiving. When his game was first conceived, it was going to be called Cruisin Route 66, which would see the player travel the legendary route across the USA. Mr. Jarvis felt that this pigeonholed the game and he wanted to give the player the ability to explore more of the United States using virtual tourism. At this point, the title was changed from Cruisin Route 66 to Cruisin USA. After the huge success of the Super Nintendo console, fans were wondering what was going to come next. There were rumors that Nintendo were offering up a 64-bit system, which actually came to pass. In early 1994, Nintendo signed a licensing agreement with WMS Industries, which was Midway's parent company. This allowed Midway to release 2 arcade games advertised as the first branded Ultra 64 hardware. These 2 titles were the fighting game Killer Instinct and Cruisin USA. Although the arcade game bears the brand of Ultra 64, it is in name only, as at the time the game was developed only Rare had access to the Ultra 64 development tools. The game actually runs on Midway's V-Unit hardware. Nintendo had wanted an arcade racing title to compete with the likes of Namco's Ridge Racer and Sega's Daytona USA. They specifically wanted this racer for their upcoming home Ultra 64 console, now named the Nintendo 64. Mr. Jarvis had been reading up on a new technique called texture mapping that they were using in the movies and thought they could apply that to their brand new driving game. He realized that it would look pretty cool if they could have realistic scenery and not just big blocky polygons. First and foremost, when it came to the actual game's design, were the controls. He wanted controls that were much more responsive than, say, hard drive-ins, so that if you did run off the road, you would bounce around just a bit, giving you the chance to get back in the race. There would also be just enough rubber banding so that you would never be completely out of the race. During development, Mr. Jarvis's company had financial difficulties, so Nintendo and Midway both stepped in to help out. The game took 3 years to develop, with 6 people in total working on the title. He soon realized they had a hit on their hands when the janitors and maintenance crew would spend all night playing the game rather than doing their jobs. To get everything looking just right, the team actually went around and took numerous photographs and filmed footage with their big camcorders of all the locations that were in the game long before Google Street Maps was a thing. Although the visuals were hyper-realistic, including the lovely ladies who wave the flags and hold the trophies, some things were not, such as the actual tracks you race around on. According to Mr. Jarvis, it was like the whole world was a Hollywood set, just basically a paper facade. Something that looked real but just made out of, a billboard. One of my favorite parts of the game is racing through the redwood forest, and you can just run over these redwood trees and flatten them like they're cardboard stand-ups. It's so silly and great at the same time. Although the game contained hyper-realistic visuals, it also included a bit of violence as well, including running over animals, leaving them a bloody mess. Mr. Jarvis reused a concept that was quite successful, which was the scanner in Defender. This allowed you to go over hills and tell if there was somebody coming around the corner. Or you could just go balls to the wall and white-knuckle it all the way through. Thanks to the upgraded AI, computer racers are less predictable. As with prior racing games, drone cars would go at a constant speed, but with Cruisin USA, the drone cars would actually overtake other cars, but they were also safety conscious. They would stay in their own lane and not intentionally try to hit the other drivers. However, collisions did happen, but Mr. Jarvis wanted players to get back on the road as quickly as possible if in fact there was a huge pileup. Rather than stopping the player eating up precious seconds off the clock, your car could do a flip and land right back on its wheels, losing only a couple of seconds.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
The first of its kind, 3-axis, full-motion cabinet duplicates every moving detail of your cross-country excursion. Full-throttle bumps and jumps, heart-stopping collisions, twisting turns and skids, and breakneck acceleration.
Cruisin USA rolled into arcades in 1994. As the story goes, you hop into your car in a cross-country road trip against 9 other competitors, racing from coast to coast, all the while avoiding all the cars in hopes of coming in first place. The arcade game came in a few different flavors: a stand-up model, a deluxe sit-down cabinet with a racing-style seat, and a deluxe full-motion cabinet. This one resembles a red Corvette and rocks you back and forth as you swiftly make your way across the country. There is also a 2-player Link cabinet as well. Upon stepping up to this big mamma jamma, you'll notice a steering wheel, gear shift, and foot pedals to provide that realistic driving experience. One of the benefits of switching from 2D sprites to 3D texture-mapped graphics allowed visual freedom. This included 3 different viewpoints: Lowrider, which is the viewpoint like you were inside the car; Cruisin', which is the behind the car viewpoint; and Sky High, which is a view from a helicopter. You also have a radio button that allows you to change the music during gameplay. This really does take the concept of Outrun and cranks it up to 11. There are 4 cars to choose from, including the 63 Muscle Car, Italia P69, La Bamba, and the Devastator. There are 3 hidden vehicles you can access by holding the View number 2 button, and these are the ATV, school bus, and cop car. Each one of these vehicles all have different attributes. As you can see, the graphics are fantastic with silky smooth scaling and fantastic attention to detail. The force feedback controls are very responsive, especially when playing on a real arcade unit. Nothing was better than finding 2 of these linked together for some head-to-head action. Thanks to the total freedom when it comes to choosing which tracks to race on, this game has a ton of replay value. The action is hot and heavy and fast and furious, and it's so much fun barreling down the road, making your way up the leaderboard and trying for first place. You can even double tap on the gas, which allows you to pop a wheelie as flames shoot out of your exhaust. Very cool indeed. To help you along the way, there are shortcuts littered all throughout the tracks. There are loads of little Easter eggs, such as birds splattering your windshield or birds dropping that doo-doo that they do in various areas such as Iowa. Thankfully, if you switch viewpoints, it'll go away. Speaking of Easter eggs, there is one on the Iowa race which just so happens to be one of the programmer's girlfriends. It is literally a blink and you miss it type of deal, and it happens just after the second cornfield you encounter. Thanks to the various photographs and camcorder footage, the courses are extremely detailed and very colorful. It's so cool racing across the Golden Gate Bridge as well as under the elevated train in Chicago. Aside from the deer and cows that may wander into the road, there are also other objects such as pillars and toll booths you have to watch out for. There is even a train you could potentially crash into. There are 14 races in total, with each race having its own difficulty level. But if you are feeling a bit like Memphis Reigns, you can opt for Cruisin USA, which is a trip from San Francisco to Washington, D.C. If successful, you get to jam with the president in the White House hot tub. The races you experience are Golden Gate Park, San Francisco,
Check it out, San Francisco. Checkpoint.
US 101. Redwood Forest.
Oh wow, Redwood.
Beverly Hills. LA Freeway. Death Valley. Grand Canyon.
So this is the Grand Canyon. Checkpoint.
Arizona.
Checkpoint.
Iowa.
Checkpoint.
Chicago. Indiana.
Checkpoint.
Appalachia.
Checkpoint.
And Washington, D.C.
Checkpoint.
After completing first in any race, you are given a trophy by a bikini-clad trophy girl. To receive the true ending, you have to complete the Cruisin USA mode, which sees you head to the roof of the White House where President Clinton is waiting for you. Looks like he is having a good old time with a couple of busty bikini-clad beauties in a hot tub, along with some Secret Servicemen and cows. You gotta have the cows. After this, the game is over.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Cruisin.
Come on down. I love it. Come on in the hot. Doggy. Y'all come back.
Before the game's release on the Nintendo 64, it was revealed that it was going to be censored. It's okay to show exploding heads and spine-rip fatalities, but apparently Cruisin' is just a bit too much. Mr. Jarvis had this to say in regards to the matter. It seems like Nintendo doesn't have any sense of humor. I don't know what's going on with those people. As far as the censorship goes, you are no longer allowed to run over animals since they have been removed completely. When selecting your transmission, it's no longer referred to as a power shaft. The trophy girl who wore a bikini in the arcade now has a shirt on, although there are still girls in bikinis such as the ones holding the flags. The $100 bill tunnel no longer shows Hillary Clinton smoking a stogie, but now shows the generic Benjamin Franklin. Perhaps the mighty power of the Nintendo 64 could not do a proper rendering of her mug. Something else that was removed from the arcade version was the billboard for Corn Pops, although obviously the Nintendo billboards still remain. And finally, the big one is the party with Slick Willie himself. Instead of chilling with the Commander-in-Chief, He has gone MIA, but you still get to go to the top of the White House where your car is on display, being protected by Secret Servicemen and cows. You gotta have the cows. The game was supposed to be a launch title for the Nintendo 64, but it was delayed at least a few months. The game was built from the ground up as the Midway V board was completely different than what the Nintendo 64 had under its hood. As far as the conversion goes, it's decent, but not as good as we were led to believe. Most of the game's presentation is here, but the graphics are a bit on the bland side. The frame rate is also very inconsistent. They did add a 2-player split screen mode, but that lowers the frame rate even more. The loud banging music of the arcade game has been replaced by low quality MIDI, and it doesn't sound that great. One nice addition is the use of the analog stick, but it's very touchy, similar to the steering in the arcade game. It's okay to use, but it does take some practice. As far as the gameplay, it's very reminiscent of the arcade original, but there are some annoying collision detection issues that hampers your enjoyment. The arcade game was a smash success and, as I mentioned, felt like the proper follow-up to the game Outrun. This title, along with Atari's Area 51, would soon become ubiquitous in bowling alleys, pizza joints, and movie theaters all across the country. Due to this overwhelming success, it didn't take long for Mr. Jarvis and his crack team to get back to work and bring us the follow-up entitled Cruisin World. Initially, he felt that different locations in the USA would be the best way to go, but then he decided to think bigger and make it a worldwide excursion. Mr. Jarvis and his team would travel the world with their Hi-8 cameras, taking photographs and videos of all the various locations. While the core gameplay remains the same and even runs on a modified version of the Midway V board, they did add a few things. This included the various stunts the players could do while driving. You can also pop a wheelie by double tapping the accelerator, allowing you to jump over other cars. These were functional stunts because they reduced your lap time. There was even a speed boost which actually didn't increase your speed, but it still looked pretty cool. There are also multiple routes for each race. Also, certain tracks would work better with certain vehicles. If you race on rough surfaces, then you would be better off with an off-road vehicle. Speaking of the vehicles, there are brand new ones including a Humvee ATV, Venom SST, Kamikaze AWD, and the Zombie XXX. There are a number of new locations all over the world including New York, France, Italy, China, and Australia, among others. The graphics have also been given a slight boost and they look great. The audio has been upgraded and sounds really good, and there appears to be more voice clips as well. Something else that was upgraded was the network ability, which allowed 4 players to link together instead of just 2. The Nintendo 64 conversion turned out much better than the original effort, including 4-player split screen action. Cruisin World was another big success for the company, so Jarvis and his team decided to go even further and brought us the wonderful Cruisin Erotica. Oh, my bad. That's Cruisin Exotica. This arcade title was released in 1999 and provided a huge jump in the graphics department thanks to the upgraded Midway Zeus 2 board. The game offered a number of new vehicles plus the ability to choose which driver is visible on screen, such as a baby, a clown, or Martian. Some of the exotic locations that you get to travel to include Hong Kong, Atlantis, the Amazon jungle complete with dinosaurs, Tibet, and Las Vegas. The game features a pin system to track your progress, which was similar to what was used in San Francisco Rush 2049. The game offered a number of upgrades such as multiple routes through each race, even more big air, and a number of shortcuts. The only way to properly play this game at home is on the Nintendo 64 or the Nintendo Wii, as the arcade game has not been emulated properly in MAME. It's a fun racing game that improves upon its predecessors in almost every way. Cruisin Velocity was released for the Game Boy Advance in 2001 by Midway. Keep in mind, this was after Eugene Jarvis had left Midway and created a new company by the name of Raw Thrills. Anyway, this is a not-so-great racing title for the little handheld that could, despite attempting to replicate the gameplay of its big brother. As usual, you have a number of different cars to choose from and 14 different locations to race on, but the gameplay itself is not very good. The game is named Velocity, but it feels like you're racing on the moon. Everything is slow and plodding, and it just doesn't have a good feel. You do have some new features such as a turbo boost and the ability to turn on realistic damage to your car, but really, who wants that? For cruising completionists, this is a must-have, but for everyone else, I would say it's a hard pass. 17 years after the release of Cruisin Exotica in the arcades, rumors made the round that another Cruisin title was in the works. Cruisin Adventure was spotted at a test site in Chicago, so fans were clamoring for more information. Cruisin Adventure eventually became Cruisin Blast. This game was brought to us by Eugene Jarvis' team at Raw Thrills and was licensed by Nintendo since they own the trademark for the game. This is another fantastic racing game that sees you travel the world from Rio de Janeiro to Singapore to Madagascar. The graphics, as you would expect, are absolutely fantastic with a lot of psychedelic colors and an insane amount of detail. The gameplay is extremely, no pun intended, fast and furious with a number of insane stunts and jumps you can pull off. If you miss that good old feeling of mowing down herds of cattle in your racing games, then you're in luck because Cruisin Blast allows you to do just that. Thanks to the pin system, you can also upgrade your car. The game would eventually be brought to the Nintendo Switch with a number of new additions to the gameplay.
Look out!
The Cruisin series was in just about every theater and bowling alley I frequented back in the day. The series was tons of fun, similar to Outrun, and was something truly spectacular, especially in multiplayer mode. If you would like me to do a deep dive on the various other games in the series, let me know in the comments down below. However, if you've never had the chance to put the pedal to the metal, all the while getting to rub-a-dub-dub in a hot tub with President Clinton, be sure and give this game a shot. You'll be glad you did. I wanted to give a big shout out and thank you to Mr. Eugene Jarvis for answering my various questions and also filling in the holes of my research. His company at Raw Thrills have been producing a number of arcade racing games such as the Fast and the Furious, so be sure and check them out. If you like this video, be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Also, if you would like to support me on Patreon, please click the link below. If you would like to contribute but not sign up for my Patreon, you can always click the donate button up above. Thanks everyone for watching.